The stalled sedan's hazard lights blinked out of rhythm with the rain. 2 weak amber flashes followed by a long stretch of darkness. I eased my truck onto the gravel shoulder and stopped 20 yards behind it. Water sheeted across the interstate, turning the lanes into black mirrors beneath the passing semis. I put on my hazard lights, pulled a reflective vest over my denim shirt, and called roadside assistance before stepping into the storm. The woman behind the wheel lifted her head when I tapped on the glass. Even through the rain, I recognized Payton Hernandez. I had not seen her in 14 years, not since she left for college while I was still rebuilding dirt bikes in my parents' garage and pretending the 6-year age gap did not matter. Now she was 36, and she looked as if the road had taken everything she had left. She lowered the window an inch. Stale coffee and exhaustion drifted into the rain. "Shane," she said. "Little Shane Young?" Not so little anymore. Her dashboard lights were fading. I asked her to turn the key once while I watched the instrument cluster. The starter clicked without catching. I checked the visible battery connections under the hood, but did not pretend that made me a mechanic. "Could be the charging system," I said. "The tow driver will test it properly." "You already called one?" 8 minutes ago. Do you want to wait in my truck where it is warm?" She looked toward the rearview mirror as another semi threw spray over the shoulder. "Yes." "Do you want me to carry the tote?" "The tote, yes, I have the purse." I moved her things only after she released them. We waited in my truck until the tow operator arrived, tested the battery, and confirmed the alternator was not charging. He secured the sedan for transport to a garage near our neighborhood. Payton signed the tow authorization herself before climbing back into my passenger seat. The heater pushed warm air toward her side of the cab. I gave the tow operator the address of Miller's Garage, the only 24-hour shop near our neighborhood, then texted Payton the claim number so the information remained in her phone rather than mine. "You do this for every stranger on the interstate?" she asked. "Only the ones who used to beat me at driveway basketball." "I was 12, you were 6. "You still traveled." Her eyes closed before she could answer. She fell asleep before the next exit. A tarnished silver keychain rested in her loose hand. One heavy brass key hung from it, its teeth worn nearly smooth. It did not belong to the sedan. I assumed it opened the childhood home beside mine, the house she was moving back into after more than a decade away. That should have been my first warning that assumptions were only guesses wearing clean clothes. The storm cleared before dawn. The next morning smelled of wet asphalt, pine needles, and freshly cut grass. I stood on the brick walkway outside the house next door with Payton's recovered canvas tote in one hand. Cardboard boxes leaned in unstable towers beyond the open door. Payton stood beneath the porch light in a blue floral dress with short sleeves and a modest square neckline, using the frame to keep herself upright. Her thumbnail pressed hard into the side of her index finger. "You are swaying," I said. I drove 12 hours before the car quit, slept in a moving box for 3 hours, and unpacked the kitchen. "That explains it. It does not fix it." The screen door opened wider. Laura Hernandez stepped into the doorway wearing a pale blue cardigan and holding a white kitchen towel. She had the same evaluating gaze I remembered from childhood, the kind that could turn a greeting into an inspection. Her attention moved from me to Payton and back. "Shane," Laura said, "look at you." Payton closed her eyes for half a second. Laura smiled with theatrical warmth. "When you were 14, you stood in this driveway and told Payton you were going to marry her when you grew up." "Mom." "She is exhausted," Laura continued. "She refuses to hire movers because every spare dollar is going into that sports clinic. But you grew up well." Her eyes sharpened. "Still mean it?" Payton's thumbnail drove deeper into her finger. "I recovered stolen artifacts for a living. My work depended on seeing where pressure entered a system and who benefited when everyone else became distracted." "Right now," I said, "she needs a chair." I turned to Payton. "Can I help you inside?" She let go of the doorframe and caught my sleeve. "Yes." I supported her forearm while she chose each step. No lifting, no sweeping rescue, no performance for Laura. I guided her to the only unpacked armchair and released her as soon as she was stable. In the kitchen, I opened 3 boxes before finding the coffee maker. The empty cups in her sedan had all been black. No sugar. I brewed a pot and set a mug beside her chair. Payton wrapped both hands around it. You remembered? I had evidence. Laura watched me with an expression I did not bother interpreting. I nodded once and left. Over the next few days, Payton's situation became visible through the ordinary noise of the neighborhood. Her specialized athletic rehabilitation clinic was scheduled for certification Friday. She had put her savings into the commercial lease, treatment tables, motion analysis equipment, and a hydrocryo recovery unit designed for severe knee and shoulder injuries. Boxes continued to disappear from her porch, one stack at a time. I saw her leave before sunrise, carrying rolled floor plans, and return after dark with takeout containers balanced on top of equipment binders. Once, she found a paper cup of black coffee on her porch with a note that read, "You left your kitchen light on." She brought the washed cup back the next morning with 2 protein bars inside it and no note at all. Laura had guaranteed the equipment loan. The financing agreement used the hydrocryo unit itself as collateral. If Payton failed to obtain the required operating certificate, the lender could accelerate the debt and repossess the machine. Laura had offered to cure the default only if Payton transferred 51% of the clinic's operating control to her. Laura called it protection. Payton called it losing the clinic before the first patient walked through the door. I stayed out of it until the system brought the problem to my kitchen. Tuesday afternoon. I was in my home office tracking a stolen 17th century Dutch maritime painting. A thief had routed it through a shell company in Geneva and a false auction house in Madrid. I compared customs manifests, provenance records, insurance photographs, and crate weights. The Geneva crate weighed 4 kilograms more than the Madrid crate. The painting had not changed. The frame had. I mapped the shipment chain, preserved the source files, generated checksums, and sent a chain of custody report to Elise Laurent, my Interpol contact. The report identified the likely swap window, the freight handler with access to both crate manifests, and the Madrid warehouse bay where the extra frame weight first disappeared. I attached provenance images showing oxidation patterns on the original stretcher bars and a customs photograph where one corner joint had been replaced. Her reply arrived 6 minutes later. Your weight discrepancy led us to the replacement frame. Port officers located the original behind a false wall in the Madrid warehouse. Good work. I closed the laptop. The quiet satisfaction lasted until someone knocked hard on my back door. Payton stood on the patio in faded jeans and a gray hoodie. She held a grease-stained technical manual against her chest. The hydrocryo unit failed, she said. The manufacturer's technician says the control board is destroyed. The replacement will take 3 weeks. Harrison is inspecting Friday morning. She had not asked for help yet. I waited. My mother brought the control transfer papers, she added. She says she will cover the accelerated loan if I sign. Do you want me to review the service chain and call a licensed technician? Payton released a breath. Yes, I need someone to find where the diagnosis went wrong. I took the manual and invited her inside. She sat at the kitchen island while I poured black coffee into the mug nearest her right hand. She looked at it. No sugar. You have been consistent. She opened the service packet. The manufacturer's technician had printed only a final diagnostic code, not the underlying sensor history. The board replacement estimate listed one serial number. The original purchase invoice listed another suffix. I circled both. The numbers are from the same product family, Payton said, but not the same production run. The replacement recommendation may have been generated from the wrong service bulletin. I called Nora Singh, a licensed biomedical equipment technician who had helped authenticate imaging equipment in a hospital art theft case 2 years earlier. In that case, a stolen radiology sculpture had been hidden inside a decommissioned imaging unit, and Nora had been the person who refused to let investigators energize the machine before its capacitors were discharged. She did not tolerate shortcuts, including mine. She agreed to meet us at the clinic that evening, provided Payton emailed the purchase records, prior service tickets, installation photographs, and electrical panel schedule before we arrived. The clinic occupied a renovated warehouse in an industrial park. Fresh paint, adhesive, and new rubber flooring sharpened the air, The hydrocryo unit stood in the center of the main treatment floor, stainless steel and silent, a red fault light blinking on its display. I did not remove a panel. Nora did. She locked out the power, verified the circuit was dead, then inspected the wiring with a thermal camera and a calibrated multimeter. Payton stood beside her with the service records. I photographed every serial plate, connector label, and damaged section under Nora's direction. The board is not visibly burned, Nora said. The fault code is protective. I need the event log before I clear it. Payton connected her clinical laptop and exported the full sensor history. Nora traced the fault sequence to an intermittent ground event at the compressor relay. The cable shielding had been pinched against a chassis mount during factory assembly. Vibration had worn through the insulation. The relay had fused when the current grounded against the frame. The previous technician ran the generic bulletin for the wrong production suffix. I said, placing the two service records side by side, that bulletin treats this code as board failure. The correct bulletin requires a physical ground inspection first. Nora nodded. That explains the false diagnosis. Payton touched the edge of the dead display. Can it be repaired before Friday? The board survived, Nora said. The damaged cable and relay can be replaced, but the exact factory relay is on back order. I studied the component certificate attached to the service bulletin. The specifications are not proprietary. Voltage, sustained amperage, insulation class, temperature range, enclosure rating. Nora followed my finger down the page. A compatible industrial component could work if it meets every requirement, and I document an independent field evaluation. There is a marine supply house near the docks. I said, they carry certified relays for shipboard medical and refrigeration systems. I can trace inventory and certificates. You approve or reject the part. Payton looked from Nora to me. Do it, she said. I will call the lender and document that a licensed repair is in progress. The next morning, I reviewed the marine supplier's catalog, purchase histories, and certification sheets. The first relay matched the amperage but not the sanitation enclosure. The second matched the insulation class but required a different mounting distance. The third exceeded the original thermal and electrical ratings, used a sealed fire retardant enclosure, and had traceable component documentation. Its certificate linked to a production batch, not merely a marketing sheet. I called the manufacturer listed on the certificate, verified the batch number, and asked Nora to confirm that the enclosure could tolerate the clinic's cleaning agents. Payton sat across from me at the clinic's temporary reception desk, matching each vendor email to the purchase log. She caught one invoice where the component suffix had been transposed. That one is wrong, she said. I checked it twice. She was right. Good catch. I notice what matters, she said, returning my own line without looking up. Nora approved it conditionally after reviewing the data sheet. Payton drove us to the supply house. On the way, she handed me a wrapped sandwich. You forgot breakfast again. I had coffee. That answer has already failed inspection. At the counter, I verified the relay's serial number against the certificate before Payton paid for it from the clinic account. She saved a digital copy of every receipt and emailed the packet to herself, Nora, and the clinic accountant. Back at the warehouse, Nora performed the high-voltage repair. I stayed on documentation and supply chain verification. Payton managed the coolant lines, treatment fluid pressure, and clinical calibration under Nora's safety plan. We divided the work across 2 folding tables. Nora kept the energized equipment tools inside a marked boundary. I maintained the repair log outside it, recording every removed part, replacement serial number, torque specification, and test time. Payton prepared the clinical side of the acceptance test, treatment fluid temperature, circulation rate, emergency release, sanitation cycle, and patient contact surfaces. At 6 that evening, Laura called. Payton looked at the screen, then placed the phone face down. Do you need to answer? I asked. No. My attorney already told her the equipment review is active. Answering now only creates another current to fight. I did not praise the boundary. I simply wrote the next serial number into the log. By Thursday afternoon, the relay was mounted, the damaged cable replaced, and the wiring secured away from vibration points. Nora ran insulation resistance and grounding tests while I organized the results into a compatibility packet. Original invoice, correct service bulletin, photographs, serial numbers, purchase order, component certificates, load calculations signed by Nora, and time-stamped test results. Payton adjusted the work lamp when she noticed me squinting at the fine print. "You were leaning closer to the page every 10 minutes, she said. "I am confirming the serial suffix. You are aging in real time. I am 29. Exactly. Tragic." The marine relay sat on the bench beside us. Payton tapped its sealed housing. "It looks like a part from a submarine. Submarines prefer components that do not catch fire." That is an unexpectedly strong sales pitch. The laugh that escaped her was brief, but it changed the temperature of the room. Nora returned from the electrical panel carrying 3 printed test strips. "I leave for 20 minutes and the submarine acquires a sales department." "Shane handles illicit maritime objects," Payton said. "Apparently that includes relays." "I handled documentation." "You handled the sandwich too?" "Under protest." Later, while Payton stood on the second rung of an aluminum ladder adjusting an overhead intake valve, her boot shifted on the metal tread. "Can I steady you?" I asked. "Yes." I placed one hand flat between her shoulder blades while she finished the turn. The moment her feet reached the floor, I stepped back. "Do not rush the threads," I said. "Do not narrate my mistakes, little Shane." I returned to the paperwork before she could see me smile. Thursday night, we sat on the rubber floor with our backs against a stack of unopened treatment mats, eating cold takeout noodles. Nora had gone home to prepare the signed field evaluation report and return for the morning inspection. Payton turned the tarnished silver keychain in her fingers. "My mother says Harrison will reject any non-factory repair," she said. She left the partnership documents on my kitchen table. "Are you considering them?" "I am considering what happens if the lender repossesses the unit. The clinic can operate without it, but not under the business model I promised the colleges." A local university football program had already referred 6 players for post-surgical knee rehabilitation. The assistant athletic trainer had chosen Payton because her rates were lower than the private hospital network and because she had spent a decade working with athletes who could not afford to lose a season. "If Laura takes control," Payton continued, "she will raise the rates and replace half the rehab floor with spa services. The football partnership disappears first." I watched the old brass key turn beneath the amber worklight. "Your father's truck?" I guessed. "You kept it because things were simpler then." Payton stopped moving the key. "No. It opened the first clinic where I worked in Denver. The owner let investors lower equipment standards to save money. A patient was not injured, but the clinic failed its next review and closed within 6 months. I kept the key because it no longer opens anything. I had been wrong. The error sat between us without demanding to be excused. "You were not holding on to comfort," I said. "I was holding on to the invoice for compromise." Nora returned before 8 Friday morning with the signed report. Payton had already placed a duplicate compatibility packet beside the inspector's station, so I would not need to recheck the originals. She also placed a fresh black coffee beside my chair. "You slept?" she asked. "Enough." That was not a number. 4 hours. "After this inspection, you are going home. After this inspection, you are opening a clinic." Both statements can be true. At 9, Inspector Harrison entered carrying a heavy clipboard and the tired expression of a man whose schedule had been built by someone who never visited a job site. Laura arrived 5 minutes later with the black leather folder. Harrison checked the fire suppression system, emergency lighting, accessible routes, electrical panel labeling, and treatment room sanitation. At the hydrocryo unit, he examined the replacement relay housing. "This is not the factory component," he said. Nora stepped forward. "I am Nora Singh, licensed biomedical equipment technician. I performed and documented the repair." She handed him her report. Harrison reviewed the component certificate, insulation test, grounding test, emergency shutoff verification, and calibration log. He asked Nora to repeat the load test. She did. The readings stayed within the approved range. I remained beside the evidence table. I had no license to interpret the safety code, and I did not pretend otherwise. Harrison compared the original service bulletin with the corrected bulletin I had traced by serial suffix. The manufacturer's first technician used the wrong production notice, he said. Yes, Nora replied. The board replacement diagnosis was unsupported. The repair record will be corrected. Laura opened her folder. If there is any uncertainty, I am prepared to restructure the clinic so a factory replacement can be installed next month. Payton's thumbnail pressed into her finger, then stopped. She placed both hands on the reception counter. The current equipment loan is secured by this unit, she said. Certification prevents acceleration. My mother is the guarantor, not an owner. The clinic is not being restructured. Harrison finished the checklist, then asked Payton to demonstrate the emergency shutdown. She stopped the cycle, released the pressure, and restarted the system according to the clinical protocol. Nora repeated the insulation reading after the compressor warmed. The number remained stable. Harrison examined the engraved manufacturer plate once more and compared it with the serial history page I had built. You traced the wrong bulletin through the suffix, he asked me. I traced the document chain. Nora determined whether the machine was safe. Nora gave a short nod. Harrison returned to the checklist. The electrical and biomedical documentation is acceptable, he said. I am issuing a conditional operating certificate. Replace the temporary cable identification labels with permanent engraved labels within 10 business days, and submit photographs. After that, the certificate converts to full approval. He printed the conditional certificate and handed it to Payton. The win was not loud. It had a corrective item, a deadline, and 6 pages of supporting documents. Payton turned to Laura. I'm not signing the shares. Laura held the leather folder against her side. You are taking a risk. It is my risk. The loan remains current. The clinic opens Monday. Future financial communication goes through my accountant and Maya Bell, my attorney. You remain the guarantor under the existing agreement. You do not receive operating control. Laura looked at the signed certificate, then at Nora's report. I was trying to keep you from losing everything. You were trying to decide what I was allowed to build. Laura did not apologize. Payton did not demand one. After a long silence, Laura closed the folder. Have your attorney send me the boundary in writing? She already has. Laura left without another argument. Nora watched the door close. That may be the first governance document I have seen win an inspection. Payton gave a tired laugh. The manufacturer's regional service manager called that afternoon. After reviewing Nora's report and the mismatched bulletin, the company refunded the first diagnostic fee, corrected the service record, and opened an internal review of the technician's process. Elise Laurent also sent an update from Madrid. The stolen Dutch maritime painting had been recovered from the false frame and secured for return to the museum. My weight discrepancy had led investigators to the swap point. 2 systems, 2 false centers, both solved at the margins. The clinic opened Monday. The ribbon cutting was small. Payton stood beneath a paper banner that Laura had not chosen. Beside a treatment floor, no investor had converted into a spa. Nora attended long enough to verify the morning system check. Harrison's engraved label correction was completed by Wednesday, and the full operating certificate arrived Friday. The university football program sent its first 2 patients the following week, a running back recovering from ACL reconstruction and a defensive back rebuilding shoulder stability. Payton evaluated both herself, explained the treatment limits before discussing the advanced equipment, and scheduled their sessions around classes rather than television practice windows. The assistant athletic trainer signed a 12-month referral agreement after reviewing her outcomes protocol. I did not attend the grand opening. I was in my office finalizing the museum's recovery report when Payton left a sandwich beside my manifests and adjusted the desk lamp away from my eyes. You missed the ribbon, she said. I saw the photographs. You were invited. I was working. You are always working. She set a duplicate clinic repair packet beside my laptop. Every page was indexed exactly the way I had organized the original. "So you do not have to check it again," she said. I looked at the packet, then at her. "I would have checked it again." "I know." 3 weeks after the opening, Payton crossed the driveway at dusk. In the weeks between, we had developed a routine neither of us named. On Wednesday nights, she brought clinic paperwork to my kitchen while I reviewed provenance files. I checked vendor histories. She corrected the way I sat after 8 hours at a monitor. On Saturdays, I walked through the clinic's equipment log, and she refused to let me leave until I ate something that had not come from a vending machine. Nothing in those weeks resembled a childhood promise. It resembled repetition, boundaries, and showing up when we said we would. She wore a gray hoodie and jeans. The tarnished silver keychain rested in her palm. The useless brass key from Denver was gone. In its place was a gray magnetic fob marked Master Administration. "You left your multimeter at the clinic," she said. She did not offer it back. "Keep it. Nora says you can use it for the low-voltage treadmill displays. My mother says you only helped because you felt sorry for the girl you used to have a crush on. Your mother has a talent for reading the wrong motive into the right action." Payton stepped closer. "The old clinic key reminded me what happens when someone else's money becomes more important than the work," she said. "This one opens the clinic I kept." She held out the keychain. "When we were kids, you fixed my bike chain because you noticed it skipping before I did. You promised to marry me because 14-year-old boys confuse certainty with planning." "That sounds accurate." Her smile softened. "You promised to marry me," she said. "Still mean it?" The fob settled into my palm. She did not take it back. "I mean that I want to build toward it," I said, "one right thing at a time." Payton released a breath. "That is a more useful answer than 14-year-old you gave me." He had less evidence. She laughed, and this time neither of us looked away. We did not rush the next step. We shared dinners when schedules allowed. I helped with supply chain reviews. She introduced me to the football program's equipment manager when a recovered antique championship trophy surfaced in an estate sale with questionable provenance. The trophy's engraved plate had been replaced, but the repair marks beneath it matched photographs from the university archive. Payton persuaded the athletic department to open its equipment records, and I traced the estate seller to a former storage contractor. The university recovered the trophy without public spectacle. She respected the distance between me and my father without trying to close it for me. On his birthday, she set coffee beside my hand and asked whether I wanted company or quiet. "Quiet," I said. She nodded and worked at the other end of the table. Months later, the clinic was booked 3 weeks ahead. The equipment loan had been refinanced through a local medical practice lender without Laura's control. Payton's accountant sent Laura a final written confirmation that her guarantor obligation had been released. The boundary did not require an emotional reconciliation to become real. Laura attended one community open house, stayed for 20 minutes, and left without attempting to rewrite the business plan. Before leaving, she told Payton the reception area looked more practical than inviting. Payton answered, "Good, it is a clinic." Laura almost smiled. It was not an apology, but it was the first conversation that did not end with a demand. On a rainy Thursday evening, I entered through the employee door using the magnetic fob. Payton finished the final patient note at the reception desk. I set a stainless steel thermos of a hot black coffee beside her right hand. Her shoulders lowered when the metal touched the counter. "The running back cleared his return to practice test," she said. "Elise confirmed the maritime painting is back in the museum. 2 recoveries. Different objects. Same current?" Outside, rainwater moved along the curb toward the storm drain, already finding the direction the street had given it. Payton closed the laptop. Together, we checked the hydro-cryo unit, locked the glass doors, and stepped into the rain. The keychain rested in my pocket, and every key on it opened something we had chosen to keep. The end. Closing thoughts. Core lesson. Real partnership protects good work by respecting evidence, boundaries, and the person making the final choice. Green flag. Healthy love shows agency, consistency, and reliability. Toxic passion uses urgency and control as substitutes for trust. Would you trust someone more for solving the problem, or for respecting how you chose to solve it. Please like and subscribe so we can share more stories like this. The end.